Hello everyone. While you're having a break from work, or enjoying your weekend, our planet is literally being blasted by electrical discharges. Did you know that lightning is one of the most frequently occurring natural phenomena on Earth? According to estimates, lightning forms in the sky about 1,400,000,000 times a year. That's 3 million flashes every day, or 44 discharges every second. So, while we're saying this, there have already been several hundred lightning strikes somewhere in the world, and we simply must learn more about this phenomenon. Let's get it on. Lightning McQueen was good, but not as good as real lightning. We aren't even talking about a flash that travels at the speed of light. We mean the speed of the strike itself. It's roughly 270,000 miles an hour. How fast is that? Well, if you manage to ride a lightning bolt, your journey from the Earth to the moon would take only 55 minutes. Almost like a suburban express, though not the most comfortable one. You can't even sit on it properly though. Although lightning bolts seem huge in the sky, they're actually only an inch wide. This little electric discharge, as wide as a toe, is incredibly bright thanks to the energy concentrated in it. And here lies the second reason why you can hardly reach the moon riding a lightning bolt. The temperature of the discharge can reach 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. For comparison, the surface of the sun is about 5 times colder. The difference is like that between boiling water and water in the sea in early summer. There's another reason you can't travel on lightning. A lightning strike forms in 2 microseconds, or 2 millionths of a second. For comparison, blinking takes you an average of 350,000 microseconds. But as usual, there are exceptions here too. In 2020, during the meteorological observations, 2 incredible records were set at the same time. On April the 29th, the giant lightning stretched 477 miles through Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Keep in mind, the typical length of lightning is 1.2 miles. Noticing how impressed people were, Zeus decided to show off one more time. And on June the 18th, the sky over Uruguay and northern Argentina was pierced by a discharge with a flash lasting 17 seconds. Just remember how long a 15-second YouTube ad feels. It's hard to even imagine what this rarest phenomenon looked like for eyewitnesses. Well, we've figured out the characteristics of lightning. It's fast, frequent, and hot. But what about their character? Oh, yeah, they have plenty of attitude. For example, someone once said that lightning never strikes in the same place twice, but this is far from the truth. Actually, the probability of a lightning bolt striking the same point is almost higher than it just hitting the ground. In fact, it makes sense from a physics point of view. The discharge follows the path of least resistance, so why should it make things complicated and ignore the already tried path? It's like finding a shortcut from home to school without traffic jams, and the next day you suddenly decide to take a detour through the next block. That wouldn't make any sense, would it? Actually, lightning bolts are not only happy to strike the same place twice, they often hit several targets at the same time. Here's a great example of such a strike from Chicago, where lightning hit 3 of the tallest buildings in the city at once. And we weren't kidding about the character. Like people, lightning can be negative and positive, but even here, lightning subverted the expectations. We'll explain. 95% of all lightnings carry a negative charge. They form in the negatively charged area below the base of a thunderstorm, and in this case, they transfer a negative charge from the clouds to the ground. Only a small part of lightning forms near the top of the thunderstorm. They transfer a positive charge from the clouds to the ground, but they don't exactly carry any positive vibes. It's positive lightning that is the most dangerous and has mind-blowing power. It can carry roughly 300,000 amps of power, and the voltage reaches up to 1 billion volts. That's so much more than in our sockets. No need to compare though, just check out how positive lightning literally shatters the space around.
dem kraften ändrar nu.
It's believed that this type of lightning is responsible for many forest fires and damage to power lines. If a typical discharge causes sand to melt like sugar, can you imagine how easy it is for the positive lightning to set fire to a tree or some wires?
That is sick Fulgurite action, yeah.
Perhaps you too were lucky enough to once find a similar thing on the beach, although they're not so common. First, lightning must strike some sandy area, for example, a beach. Well, then in a fraction of a second, an electric current heats up the air and water particles between the grains of sand, turning them into a glass tube called a fulgurite, a kind of autograph of a lightning bolt. Maybe you hit the beach more often than lightning does, but you'll never get as close to a volcanic eruption as they do. This is where the storm stages its most impressive performances, and there are several reasons for that.
Whoa! Watch me!
Volcanic lightning is formed when static electricity builds up in the atmosphere, just like with a typical thunderstorm, though the mechanism here is quite different. Speaking of static electricity in the mountains, here's a clear sign that you should better get down to the ground.
Now it's in my head. Come here, come here.
These shots were taken in Alaska, and most scientists agree that they don't promise anything good. Even if the volcano doesn't erupt, such an amount of accumulated static electricity may indicate a thunderstorm approaching. Well, if it comes to an eruption, don't expect any mercy. Volcanic lightning has several sources of recharging at once, like ice particles, fragments of rocks and ash, and finally, radiation. All of this stuff collides with each other, causing the thunderstorm to gain great power, but still not as great as on other planets. Yes, the Earth is far from unique in this regard. If there's life on Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, then it must be really tired of constant lightning flashes. The inhabitants of the last two planets must be having a particularly hard time. Over 4 decades, scientists have been observing lightning on Jupiter constantly. Whenever they look at the planet, there's always a storm at some point in the atmosphere. Migrating from there to Saturn is rather pointless as well. Although thunderstorms aren't everlasting here, they can still last for months. And in 2013, the most powerful storm known in the solar system broke out on Saturn. It stretched for 140 miles. You probably don't even have this much mileage on your car yet. And since we're talking about cars, can you feel safe if a thunderstorm caught you riding a car? Good news is, yes, you can. Bad news is, not all the time. If lightning does strike the car, it will hit either the antenna or an area along the roof. Then the charge will pass through the outer metal shell. At this time, it's better not to touch the metal parts inside, and then it heads to the ground through the tires. This, however, won't convert your car into an electric one. Most likely, the electronics will be fried. The antenna will melt and the wheels will be damaged. But you must admit, this is a small price to pay because you will stay alive. Unless, of course, you forget to close the windows first. The lightning bolt is waiting for this loophole to get into the cabin and ride with you in the passenger seat. However, the closed windows didn't help the Atlas Centaur rocket. Yes, even a spaceship is easy prey for lightning. In 1987, NASA didn't cancel a rocket launch despite bad weather conditions, and it cost the agency $78 million. Just 49 seconds after liftoff, lightning struck right on target, disabling the controls and sending the rocket into the ocean. Fortunately, it was unmanned. In general, we feel like there's someone up there who's tired of annoying guests. Look at how the electric discharge attacks the Soyuz rocket. If even a space rocket isn't safe, then hiding from lightning in water would seem like a really bad idea. So, why don't lakes, seas, and oceans turn into fish soup during a thunderstorm? Nature is not so hard-working to restore the fish population each time lightning strikes water, so it thought everything through. The charge accumulates on the surface of the water, and the impact doesn't penetrate deep enough to harm the animals. Does this mean, though, that by diving under the water you can avoid electric shocks? In theory, yes, you can. Though, would you really want to check it out? Although there are people who have experienced the power of lightning on themselves. Some of them were fortunate, and some not so much. This Texas man was struck by lightning while he was walking his dogs. The shepherds scattered in fear, the poor guy dropped on the spot, and he was miraculously saved by passers-by who performed CPR. But here's the surprising part. Alex only suffered a burn on part of his head and a bruise from falling to the ground, though his socks and sneakers were blown off by the lightning strike. We know what else you want to know, though. The dogs have been found and they are fine. It's unlikely that the guy would like to relive this experience again, but remember that lightning doesn't mind striking the same place twice, or even 7 times, like in the case of Roy Sullivan. Lightning haunted this guy for 35 years and fried his thumbnail and eyebrows, injured his shoulder and ankle, burned his chest and stomach. But this human lightning rod turned out to be stronger and was recognized in the Guinness World Records. Rightly so. The probability of being struck by lightning 7 times is 2 septillion to 1. 1 septillion has 24 zeros. Have you ever heard of such numbers? As we said earlier in the video, lightning has an attitude. It can burn your eyebrows and hair, or give you a gift. No kidding. In 1980, Edwin Robinson, who was blind and almost completely deaf after an accident, was struck by lightning in his own yard. When the man woke up, he discovered that he could hear and see again. Moreover, after a while, hair began to grow on his bald head. Perhaps it was a reward for being a good man. Before being struck by lightning, Edwin went out into the yard to keep his pet chicken out of the rain. And this is Tony Secoria. Lightning sent him into a cardiac arrest and left a couple of burns, but also unlocked a hidden talent. In a couple of weeks after the strike, the man felt an irresistible desire to listen to piano music, and then he bought an actual piano and eventually became a pianist and composer. Still, lightning is much more likely to fry you than turn you into an X-Man. So, how do you stay safe? By being cautious, of course. That is, don't be like this guy and hide under the trees. We think you're well aware of this rule. We also don't recommend trying to scare away lightning by ringing bells, as they did until the end of the 18th century. No one doubted that it worked. Many bells even had an inscription of Fulgura Frango, or I am chasing lightning. Well, time has proved that everything works the opposite way, and 3 decades later, when 103 bell ringers were killed by discharges that hit high towers with metal bells, the custom was finally banned. Seriously, did that take them 103 poor fellows to figure out there's a pattern? Perhaps the best solution would be to stay at home, especially if you live in Antarctica or Egypt. Even though up to 3 million lightning strikes per day are recorded in the world, they're distributed unevenly. It's almost impossible to see them at the South Pole or in Egypt. But in South America, there are more than enough thunderstorms, especially in this scenic place. This is Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela, where thunderstorms are raging for 70 to 200 days a year. At the peak, there are up to 28 lightning strikes per minute, and the probability of getting hit by lightning here is the highest in the world, though this show is so bright and magnificent that you can safely watch it at a distance of up to 250 miles away. So, if you want to see the biggest thunderstorm of your life, you should go there, especially since you know almost everything about lightning now.